couple of weeks ago um, in a in a talk that actually wound up was intended to address aversion, and then it ended up actually doing it through a bit of a different approach, suggesting that development of the Pāramīs would really be a powerful way to work with aversion. And since that talk, I've been thinking and also talking with friends a little bit about maybe doing a series on the Pāramīs. So today we're going to start with not the first one, but one that was identified as a favorite by someone who's here, and it's patience. And so some of the sharing just now, and maybe for all of us, everyone's heart probably is always benefited by bringing more patience to a situation. And I'll offer some caveats about that a little bit, because we need wisdom too, of course. But today we're gonna return to including a bit of meditation in the program. So we'll start with maybe a short sit together. So please find a comfortable position, and this will give us all a chance to settle in. You want to really pay attention to the body. Finding a position that's comfortable and still keeping the spine relatively straight so energy can flow freely through it. And as we settle in, we can notice how the various areas of the body feel. Just noticing any tension around our eyes, our face, and inviting that to relax. Tightness in the shoulders or neck. Or in the belly. Relaxing our arms and legs. Maybe adjusting our posture a little bit to be a little bit more comfortable. And then settling our attention on our breathing or on whatever object you're used to using that helps to bring calm to the body and to the mind. In the Buddha's instructions on mindfulness of in and out breathing, he invites us to put our attention on our breath, knowing that we're breathing in, knowing when we're breathing out. If that in breath or that out breath are long or short. It's just establishing mindfulness, mindfulness of a particular subject, object. And so the whole first part of his instructions on mindfulness are to help the body become tranquil. And then to feel to feel the starting of spiritual energy flowing in the body. PT and Sukha. And even if you don't have that feeling, even bringing that into the mind orients us towards that awareness or sensitivity to that feeling arising. And what is it that you feel when you become calm? And when you know you're in the presence of warm and loving friends, and you're safe. And you can relax. We're having a little bit of a chaotic morning. We seem to have lost track of the bell. Sorry. So, as I promised, I want to talk a bit about patience. And I'm just noticing how important it is to be willing to be patient, patient with things that take longer than we would like them to take, and patient with things that we can't change. The Buddha talked about patience often in terms of enduring, um, having forbearance, holding ourselves back a bit when it's useful. And he often talked about patience in conjunction with metta, loving kindness, gentleness, and tolerance. So I'm going to hit upon these various qualities and see how we can develop more patience, and maybe even more importantly, really notice the patience that we have and congratulate ourselves for that when we do calm ourselves down and hold back in situations. And I'll share a few of the suttas where patience appears. In the Dhammapada, there's this very famous verse that's often pointed at as the simplest way that the Buddhist teachings are described. It's number 183. It's to avoid evil and to do what's good and to purify one's mind. And this is the teaching of all the Buddhas. That's the verse. And the very next one is about patience. Patient endurance is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. He is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciant who oppresses others. So that's the very next saying in the Dhammapada. And it's the case that the Buddha really praised patience, patient endurance. There's another sutta, this one's in the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha says that, or it's not the Buddha, it's Sakka, the Lord of the Devas. He's talking to the Buddha. And he says that a man should make an effort until his goal is accomplished. So keep working on something until you've completed it, until you've accomplished it. And he said the goal of goals that shine when accomplished, more, there's no better one than patience. That's the one that really shines when accomplished. There are some more references, of course, in the suttas. Oftentimes the Buddha will say, we have to have patient endurance with regard to flies, mosquitoes, wind, burning, creeping things, pain in the body, and all different kinds of discomfort. And sometimes I reflect on how in those days they didn't have a lot of help or resources for pain relief. You really just had to learn how to endure it. And that's it's a helpful practice. Ajahn Chah devised so many ways to frustrate the monks, to train them to be patient, to train them to endure. It's kind of sometimes funny and sometimes a little fear-inducing to think of having a teacher like that who really presses you to your limits of patience, and to really see how do we develop this incredibly important quality. when I think about this, sometimes I remember my childhood as an opportunity to really develop patience. Um, because of the farm life, you have to really learn how to deal with long, boring tasks. Um, and when I was 8 years old, I think I've told you, some of you, this before. I started working in the field for the neighbor, and this is a nice thing to be able to do because I could earn some money for myself. And my mom would say, some parents, when the kids go out and earn money, the parents want them to give it over to them. But she said, we'll never do that. Your money that you earn is for you. So it was kind of cool. And I felt like I was starting kind of late because my brother started working at the neighbors when he was 6 years old. And I was 8, so I was a late bloomer, I guess. But it was in the asparagus field. So that when you started, when my brother started when he was 6, it was driving the tractor that pulled the cart that the people who are picking the asparagus were sitting on. And that was my job too when I was 8. And you drive really, really slowly, and you have to stay on the road, on the track, so you don't drive over the asparagus. And it's a very meditative kind of long, boring task that you have to constantly pay attention. And and it really helps to develop patience because you're just in it. It's um, it's your job. And of course, there are a lot of things like that on the farm, whether it's field work or other things, canning vegetables or whatever. And the farm's not the only place where you have these things. We all have the opportunities to do work that we don't always want to do. There are always going to be things about our life, our livelihood, that are, you know, things that we don't really enjoy doing, but we do it anyway. And for that, we have to develop patience. And then that helps us to be patient with our own minds. And I think that's probably a very important place to apply patience, because if we get frustrated with the defilements that come up, we're not going to be as effective in working through them. I think we have to be willing to address whatever's arising again and again, even though we're so sick of it. Why isn't this over yet? And of course, the body has many ways of offering challenges to us for which we can develop patience and being present and willing to endure with a sense of calm. So when the Buddha talked about patience and metta, I can really see how those qualities fit together. When we're patient, there's also a kind of kindness that comes in. When we're kind, when we have the loving kindness developing in us, then we also, I think, are developing patience. And I think it's helpful for us to look at when we don't have patience, when we get really frustrated, anxious, maybe the times when I've been impatient. I think there's a concern for something, or there's just the frustration. And when it's good to notice, like, what are those conditions, those situations? Is it when the post office keeps delivering the mail to the wrong address, or is it frustration with people doing work that is not to our standard, or is it the frustration of listening to people saying the same things over and over again? Um, one of the tests of my patience was, taking care of my mom in her later months, particularly years. When she started to repeat herself a lot. At first, I was correcting her, you know, um, and then I realized, this wasn't because she um, was somehow not paying attention or whatever. It was the changes in her mind, and that was an incentive to the kindness, the desire to be kind, created an incentive to be more patient. And I feel like these paramis really can work together. Kindness and patience and determination. When we really want to develop ourselves in a way that we're more caring, then we have this ability, this opportunity to really develop patience, and the incentive to develop patience. There's a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha talks about 5 qualities. He first talks about impatience, and he says there are 5 drawbacks to impatience. Most people will find you unlikable and unlovable. You're cruel. And later you're remorseful. You feel lost when you die. And when the body breaks up after death, you go to an unhappy place. We'll just leave it at that. We will go through the list of possibilities, but the benefits of being patient are the opposite. People find you likable and lovable. You're not cruel, and nor are you remorseful. And you don't feel lost when you die. And when your body breaks up after death, you're reborn in a good place. So, it's like a lot of these lists that the Buddha gives. The general idea, of course, is this quality is really worth attention, worth the effort. And we can see how beneficial it is when we have patience. I'd like to invite you to really think back about a time when you felt very impatient, but you held back. And patience was what was seen on the outside. And then what the results were. And imagining or knowing from experience about times when we've been impatient and what the results are. I had an experience once a number of years ago where I'm not going to tell you the details exactly, but it was related to the running of the vihara, and something that was happening that was pretty frustrating. And I chose to be, even though in the inside, there was a lot of intensity, on the outside, there was a lot of patience. and it really paid off. It was such a good thing to not have expressed that impatience. Now, the caveats. We have to use wisdom. We want to be patient with ourselves, but when our defilements are kind of taking control, then we have to put our foot down. So it's like we have to know when we don't accept the situation. I have to explain that too, because another place where we see patience a lot is with acceptance, accepting things as they are. we always need to start there, even if it's something we're going to change, to accept that I am patient, to accept that I am anxious, or whatever the thing is, accept that we're feeling frustrated, accept that there is something that's not being handled correctly, or something that's not going the way we want it to go, or something very undesirable, like some condition in the body. First, we accept it. But then, of course, it's not intended to be an encouragement to let things continue to go wrong. We need to do what we can to turn it around. And that's really important in our own minds, in our own behavior, because this cultivation of patience has to come along, has to be in conjunction with the cultivation of wisdom, so that we're really handling things in ourselves in a good way. And we have to have the forgiveness side of it. So the word khanti, the Pali for the patience that we find in the Pāramīs, can also be translated as forgiveness. It's also related in the Pali text dictionary. You'll see, I think, patience, forbearance, and forgiveness. So part of that patience, forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, but then also putting in the effort and the guardrails for behavior to improve. Now we just heard of this circumstance that one of you today is talking about, with having workmen, some damage in the house, and workmen that did a very unsatisfactory job to try to remedy it, and going through this for a long time. And how do you maintain the patience and still the taking action to remedy the situation? And so it's really, the patience needs to be all the stronger when we take action and then things don't really work the way we want them to work, and we keep having to continue the process and maybe eventually accept that excuse me, that it's not going to get better. And of course, this is all, any circumstance like this excuse me, is preparation for the damage to the body. And at some point, it's not going to get better. And when we can relate to our body itself in this way, that we are not the owner, we're just the occupant, and we can appreciate that it is destined to fall apart, and we can have the patience to bear with that. A lot about patience is bearing with life, bearing with the constant changes, bearing with and appreciating both bearing with the negative and appreciating the positive, but not getting caught up in either one of them. And of course, the reward, yeah, we're easier to live with. It's more comfortable to be around people who are patient, and we're more at peace, can let go. When my son was small, so he was born when I was 20 years old. Thank goodness, because he really required a lot of energy. Trying to keep up with him was super challenging. And when he was around 2 years old, I realized I wasn't going to be able to control this situation. And so I had to really be patient and persistent to care for him and to um, keep him out of trouble. He was a very good child, but he was very inquisitive and busy and constantly on the move. And and he kind of still is 50 years later. It's just amazing how people's energy can just be so much a part of them. And one of the things that was really touching was my grandma saying that she thought I was the most patient mother she knew. And I wasn't, I mean, she was a very forthright person, so I don't think that was a hidden kind of indication that she thought I had an unruly child. But I think it really was intended as an appreciation of um, the patience that it really just was required. It was just required. And so I don't know. I think I'd like to encourage you all to think about those times when you've been patient and reflecting on that. I think with a lot of kindness and appreciation for your own practice and for yourself, I think that will go a lot farther to deepening our quality of and our wealth of patience in ourselves. And I guess one more thing that I want to add is I think it's very valuable to notice when we are impatient, as I said before, but thinking in terms of like, what are the conditions that trigger that? Am I more patient with some people than others? And if that's true, why? Am I more willing to listen patiently? If a person has characteristics and qualities I'm used to, familiar with, or maybe grew up with, and less so with people who seem different from me. And I think these are valuable questions. We want to make sure that we're consistently patient and consistently wise. So I'll just leave it there as a reflection, and then I'd like to hear your comments and questions. Yes, Martin and Saket.
Yeah, so I had an interesting opportunity to practice this while you were talking, because I got a phone call from my boss, and so I declined it, and I said I will be free in 45 minutes. But then I've been really wondering what it is about.
Why are you calling me on Saturday morning? Yeah. And I imagine that you're really noticing the feelings that are coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, thank you, Martin. Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, first I need to say that I'm so thankful having you available in this format or this venue or whatever we call it once a week, because you always pull me back when feel like I'm starting to fall off the path. I mean, I don't mean that as anything quite serious, but your wisdoms and your insights just keep blowing me away. So I thank you for that. Yeah, I was starting to get impatient as you were speaking because I had this burning question that I just felt the need to throw in there. And then by being patient, you more or less discussed it anyway. But it still keeps coming back to my mind, so I'm just going to put it out there. I've always prided myself on being a pretty patient person, and even find myself in situations where I get annoyed at other people's impatience. Somebody behind me, doing all that sighing, and it just gets so irritating. But so this is a tough bit. About 5 years ago, I was taken off of a medication that I'd been on for about 40 years, a medication for anti-anxiety. And in a lot of ways, it was a great thing for me to get off it, but it's had an effect on my abilities to focus, my abilities to meditate, and I've only just started noticing it's had an effect on my patience. And what I notice is I still behave, like you said, externally, it seems like I'm being very patient. But I notice more and more now, while I'm being patient, the kind of judgments that are running through my head. And is the patience really coming out of something skillful, or is it coming out of sort of the way I was raised to always sort of let others go first, be polite, be kind? So and like I said, I think you kind of addressed it. There's a wisdom that has to go with it. But I just thought I would throw that out there because the judgment concerns me a little bit. And I probably always had that judgment, but I just wasn't really aware that was going on. With now my mind being more monkey mind than it ever has been before, which already was pretty bad. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. I don't know if there's any comment that you can make about that, but I guess I wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I feel like there are 2 points that first of all, this sense of how the medication affects your mind and body, and how it is to be without it, and relearn really how to develop these good qualities and the way that you want to be in this new context without the medication. And it sounds to me like you're managing pretty well, because you still are appearing patient. And I think that it's important for us to remember that the internal experience just comes up. And then we have the responsibility to deal with it in a proper way. Part of that is by not acting on it. So this idea that, well, is it really genuine? It's not about being genuine. We just have, what's genuine is your intention and your commitment to being kind and to being patient and not letting that spew out on people. And if that was your training as a child, yay! It's like, good on them. It's like, and to be able to keep that going is important. And I'm reminded when you say that about the story of Ajahn Chah and the man who wanted to read his palm, and Ajahn Chah rejected all this stuff, right? But this guy kept begging to read his palm, so finally he let him, and he looked up shocked, and he's like, "You have a lot of anger." And Ajahn Chah says, "Yes, but I choose not to use it." And so, you know, what is actually arising internally, even for an arahant? I don't know if Ajahn Chah was an arahant at that time, but certainly a pretty amazing monk. And, you know, to recognize that, you know, it really is about seeing our own, experiencing our own feelings and observing them with wisdom and just determining what is appropriate to take action on and what isn't, guiding the mind. So you're in a situation and there are judgments coming up, and then there's the wisdom part of the mind determining whether those judgments are wholesome or unwholesome, and then, you know, taking the appropriate measures. And that's the process. So when the Buddha says, you know, that, I know I repeat this a lot, but I think it's amazing, you know, when the monks were sitting around talking about the miracles that happened when the Buddha was born, and the Buddha says, yes, but, you know, one of the most important miracles about the Tathagata is that the Tathagata knows that a feeling's just a feeling, a thought's just a thought, a perception's just a perception. And so this is where, you know, whatever that feeling is, whatever that thought is, whatever that perception is, we need the knowing, the Dhamma, the wisdom part of the mind, evaluating that in a way that's balanced. And well, if it's Dhamma, then we're seeing it. You know, we're seeing whether that's wholesome or unwholesome. And then to have the energy, the determination to act on that in the proper way. So I don't think we really get free of that until parinibbana. Because even arahants, I mean, I do believe I heard Ajahn Mahabua on a recording say that he never got over his fear of tigers. And I think that must be that the fear arises, but then he's not acting on it. He knows that it doesn't matter what happens to the body, you know, it's just like this innate kind of reaction in the system.
This is very comforting. Thank you. I also just want to add that the line, I think it was from the sutta, not from the poem. Words I know are leaving my brain at a rapid clip as I age. The two things that you read earlier. The line about the benefit of practicing patience is that you don't feel lost when you die.
Yeah.
You know, when I first hear that sentence, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And then it's like, I like that. There's something very, I don't know, that one just really hit home somehow. And I'm glad you read that today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too, Neil. We need to avoid that concern about being a sucker. It sounds like the situation has gotten to the point where there isn't much on a practical level that you can do, at least not with regard to these people that you employed. Yeah, this is where patience is helpful and renunciation is helpful. We really do need to practice, all of us, in letting go of what we think is unfair, letting go of what we feel is you know, wrong. It's just wrong. You can know that it's wrong, that it's, you know, very bad workmanship. You've already taken, I'm sure, as many practical steps as you can to get the thing rectified, and now they're done, and thank goodness you can be done too. And then it's more of a mental challenge, an emotional challenge. And that's where we really have We can take this as an opportunity for deepening our practice. And that's really what it's good for. And that, you know, I used to go to visit Berkeley Buddhist Monastery and listen to Reverend Hung Sure talk. And, you know, Master Hua would teach them, take a loss. You know, when you're in a situation, there's an argument, there's a disagreement, take a loss. And he talked about one time when he was in charge of things like paying the bills for the monastery, and something happened, some bill didn't get paid on time, and then there was a penalty, but he wasn't doing that job anymore. It was someone else's job now. And Master Hua on the phone with him was really giving him a scolding that this happened. And Reverend Hungsher said his immediate kind of reaction would have been to say, no, wait, this isn't my fault. I didn't do it. It's not my responsibility anymore. But he didn't. He just listened. He just took it. And then he said, I have done this same thing many times. And he just took it. He took the loss. And then, and it was also at a time when he was studying, and I think he was coming down to some deadline, and he was super busy, and he was getting his PhD, I think, and it was a lot of stress, but he just took the loss. And then after that, Master Hua said, pass. He passed. And it's like, you know, this is like, we can just, okay, the big teacher made a mess of your place, got these workers in here that made a mess of your place, and now you have a chance to let go. Learn how to let go. And you can say, well, is that wise? Because, you know, a lot of our training is, I need to stand up for myself. If I don't stand up for myself, I'm stupid, I'm a fool. If I don't buy the thing on the best sale, I'm a fool, you know, and all that kind of stuff. That's the world talking. That part doesn't have any consideration for whether or not we will feel lost when we die. It knows nothing about that. It knows nothing about those kinds of values, know nothing about what happens after you die. It doesn't understand karma. It doesn't understand forgiveness. It doesn't understand letting go and the reason we let go. Because then we have peace of mind. And of course, there's all those emotions that come from having that long conditioning of being told we need to fight back, we need to make things right, we need to have justice, we need to be treated fairly, we need to be treated with respect. I need people to know that I know better than you do, all those things. And then all that feeling is there, and this is our chance to calm it, to not follow it, to let it go. It's just habit, it's conditioning, it's just habit. And it comes from such a long and it's a gauntlet of experiences that just cause that to come up, but it's not real. Feeling is just those bubbles on the surface of the water that break. It's all going to pass. And the main thing is, if we follow those feelings, then we condition the future for those feelings to arise again and keep on coming in the same way. And so this is the chance to change direction on the karma. Every moment is our chance to change the direction of the karma. Thank you for that. Thank you for, because there's some version of this in all of us. And we have this opportunity to be clear, and to be kind, to be calm, to be wise, to see through it, to see the delusion in it, to see how that attitude of everybody hates us, we have to stand up for ourselves because we're always being put down. to see through that, to see that where that goes. I mean, why are you going to be out there today? It's because you know that hatred does not overcome hatred. Thinking there's someone else there who's against this, someone else here. This is a deluded perception. And I know you know very well how to work with those feelings. You help people do it all the time. Yeah, but it's not easy. And sometimes it feels like, wow, why am I in this tsunami of emotion? Because of causes and conditions. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm just like many others today. I'm so glad you're standing up and showing up for kindness and compassion and real support for love and caring. Well, first I'll just say that, you know, I was a single parent for a long time, and dealing with an ex-partner that's not on the same page, if you want to say, that's a very mild way of saying it, is very, very hard. It's very hard. I found it very hard. But it's as a parent, you know, there's so much conditioning from the time that child is conceived. You're concerned about it. As soon as you know it exists, you're concerned about it, and you take care of it, and you nurture it, and you do all these things as a parent to try to make their life good and to guide them in a good way. And if you're in a situation where the other parent has very different values or different views, and is as you said, perhaps manipulative, it can be very difficult because of your concerns for your child and also how it impinges on your own life. But this is the point, you know, he's 14, right? This is the point where you have to let go. You have to start letting go. You have to let go of identification as the mom. You still, of course, guide them when when you have the opportunity, but there's the pain comes from holding on, and the pain comes from wanting it to be different than it is. And now, yes, he's going to go through a lot of changes, and you want to try to keep him, as I said last week to a mother, you want to try to keep them from doing long-term damage to themselves or others. But for everything else, he's going to have to find his way. And he'll listen some to his dad, and then maybe he'll see that what you've been telling him is actually better, but it's up to him. It's up to him and his karma. So, you know, in every way that you can, see if you can let go of the attachment, let go of the part that you're holding on to that makes you suffer. Because the crying doesn't really help. Maybe it helps relieve some of the feelings and kind of let off the steam, but it doesn't really change and it doesn't really help. And so it's like, for you to be sad doesn't really help. But for you to, in some way, respect that he is coming into his own as a human being, he's now becoming his own person. I mean, he always has been, but it becomes much more obvious as they get into their teens. And you can't control it. And if we try to control it, it all goes wrong. So guide where you can. Tell him constantly that you love him, that you support him. And if anything happens, he can come to you. Really listen to Ajahn Brahm's story about the opening of the door of your heart. And, you know, like when his father said that to him, however you turn out, Whatever happens to you, the door of my house will always be open to you. The door of my heart will always be open to you. Keep telling your son that. Tell him you're there, you're in his corner, you want what's best for him, and try to let go. Let go of any kind of idea of control of how that unfolds. And, you know, just, I know it's hard, but this is great practice. This is so important. You can suffer less. You trust in the Dhamma, and that when you are guiding him with wisdom from Dhamma, that's the best you can do. So at this point, don't worry about him saying those things. Don't try to tell him he's going to make bad don't say any of that back. Just do your practice on your own, keep it to yourself. Don't try to expose him to anything. He's already had the good exposure. He'll probably come back to that later. But right now, he's got to try on and take on his father's. He's following his father. That's his male role model. It's okay. It'll all start to change again later as he really has his own autonomy. If he needs to like spout off his father's views or his grandmother's views, that's okay. You could ask him a question like, you know, do you feel like, oh no, maybe not even that. I was going to say you could ask him a question like, do you feel like the Catholic point of view is to be, you know, angry and like this? I don't know, but the best thing is to try to step back and just keep pointing to how you care for him. You love him, you care for him. Don't talk about Buddhism. Don't try to give him any advice he's not asking for. It's very hard to not give unsolicited advice as a parent, but try it. Just try stepping back. Don't worry, he's not going to create so much long-term damage. We grow up, you know, I'm not worried about that kind of stuff as long-term damage. I'm worried about drugs. I'm worried about crime. I'm worried about, you know, the kinds of things that are really going to be problems. What he's saying right now, he's going to be forgiven for that. You can forgive him for whatever he's going through. He's growing up. It's hard. He's got to try on this whole other perspective for now. But it's a trying on, like a suit of clothes. Don't worry. He's going to change fashion again. It's okay. It's really okay. Thank you all for your practice, for being so honest. That's what it takes if we want to develop. We have to be honest with ourselves. And we can do it. So I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you next time.